Sure.
Hi, can I just come in for a second? Radhakrishnan here.
Yeah,
Hi,
doctor.
Radha.
Hi, Ranjit. Hi, Bhumika. Hi. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you, doctor.
Yeah, sorry. So I missed the initial bit, but just to say that most people
Hey,
joining or
sorry,
everybody.
Radha. I think your camera is completely out of focus. We can only see a part of your head, by the way.
So,
Oh, can you
Ranjit,
see me now?
That's
now,
better.
right now, can you see the presentation or are you seeing all of us?
No, it was there, but I think you stopped sharing now, so I'm not able to see it.
Okay. So the green icon for screen share,
Yeah,
the icon
at the
always
bottom.
remains, it always remains green. So we don't know whether it's off sharing or on.
So no, now it is visible. So you can keep
Yeah,
it on
yeah.
like this if you wish.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, Radha. Sorry, you were saying something.
No. I was just saying that almost all of us who are joining this haven't have sort of no real knowledge of what this entails. So you might have to start at the very beginning of what this thing is all about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So many people think that I am already doing contact tracing, but what they're doing is a small part of it, and a lot of things are there, like people doing just quarantine data and handling just quarantine
Correct.
related stuff.
Yeah.
They think that they are doing full-fledged contact tracing,
Hmm.
and but they may be doing just a very tiny part of it, or it is not the actual contacts that they are working with, and they're not working with live data. So for this one
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
for this one that we are targeting right now, we're looking at live data and then trying to stop the chain of transmission with whatever minimum we can do with manageable we can do with the community spread scenario. So that's the first part. So now, like I was telling Ranjit, that we may need multiple sessions later on as we add more contact tracing teams.
Okay. Okay.
Every team, set of team will be doing different tasks. Uh, so the first set would only be doing this much and then going off and handing over to the second set of team.
Uh-huh.
And so then the quarantine contact tracers would be separate. The initial contact tracers who make the tree, the visualize the the chain of contacts, and that kind of team would be different. So each would be under a supervisor, and all the supervisors would have a lead, another lead. So that person, the reporting and everything. Mm, there's a lot of data collection is being done here, so that is something of a challenge. But since we are looking at residential communities and the live data that residential community has, right? We are looking at that, no, and not the PBMP data.
Absolutely.
So we have the full
Um,
control of the data right now, and not waiting for BPMP to give us a data after 10 to 15 days.
well, there are a couple of people joining who are active with the home quarantine team, including Rahul Francis. I'm hoping he joins soon.
Yeah.
They will, I think, tell us exactly how Nidhi is here. Nidhi can tell us how they get the data, because Nidhi is also part of the home quarantine team. So she can tell us what kind of data they get and where they get it from,
So
so that you also know.
from what I spoke to Anish is that they do not have live data, and it is 10 days old, and the quarantine data they are working with is
Hey, folks,
yeah.
can I request that let's just wait for people to sign on because people will get confused. They'll think we've already started, but we haven't.
Yeah.
So I
Okay.
think let's just give people a minute or two. And Radha, would you like to then start with brief introduction to Bhumika?
I
Um,
think Uma was going to do that.
yeah, but I
Uma
don't see Uma
Pai.
yet.
Uma's there.
She's just trying to call.
Oh, she's there. Okay.
I'm here, but then I didn't get any message, so I thought you were doing it. Doctor, you do it, no problem.
No, that's fine, Uma. Please carry on and just do the introduction.
Okay. So I think shall we wait for one more minute? It's 11,
Yeah,
but
yeah. We
some
should.
people are
We
still
should. Yeah.
signing. So let's
Yeah,
wait
yeah.
for 11:01 and then we can start.
Actually, a little later, maybe 11:03, 11:05, or even,
Okay. Yeah.
because I know quite a few people told me they want to join up.
Okay.
Hmm.
How is it going? How has the response been?
Yeah, they're joining.
We have 10 people till now, 9 people.
Okay. Oh, I expected at least 50. We sent it to
No, we'll see. The
maybe.
people, it's just 11, so we'll give it another couple of minutes. People usually join up.
Okay. And
We will record the
Bhumika?
session and post it also, so no, we can
Right,
Oh,
yeah.
okay. Bhumika
utilize
and
it.
myself are early birds, I think, always. We can't sleep late, no, Bhumika?
No, that's fine.
Bhumika was finished already her run in Kaban Park or in Lal Bagh, done some training for all our training girls.
Hey
Now
Uma,
we
can I
will-
request you to be a little bit of silent, because otherwise people will think we've started and they'll
Okay.
get confused. So let's
Okay.
wait and then we can officially kick off. Thank you.
Okay, no issue. Thanks.
Who's Galaxy Tab A? Can they mute?
Uma, it must be Uma.
Ranjit, you're the host.
I'm the
Yes, but I've shared the host rights with Bhumika now, so she's the host.
Should I off her video? Okay.
No, video is fine. No, I was just saying you can mute, the host can mute.
Yeah, you
Everyone.
can mute everybody, Bhumika, if you wish.
Yeah, done.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Uma.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. I know everybody was busy with the Bappa Moria and Gauri Ganpati festival for 2 days. So I think it's rather a little bit late start today for a lot of us. Doesn't matter. I'm very happy to introduce to you all Bhumika Patel, who works on cyber security at IBM office as a global program manager. And she is the winner of Global Technical Achievement Award at IBM, and now also a brand ambassador for IBM, the space of IBM. Bhumika is just not making it big in the software industry, but also in the field of sports. She was profiled as Game Changers 2017, an elite list of 21 women across the world. 6-star World Marathon Majors finisher and profiled by World Marathon Majors, who credited her with sparking a revolution in women's running in India. I know that she does a lot of fitness training for all of us, especially in these COVID teams. Her work was really awesome. She kept the whole almost 10,000 ladies who were at home with home workout every day. She would be on the screen doing with us home workouts. And all the girls also put up enormous show of strength and courage and positivity. And we had yoga also done by her. She's a certified yoga instructor. So she used to do a lot of power yoga and backbone, strengthening yoga, core strength, vinyasa yoga, you name it. We've been doing a lot of different yoga activities, every day from 6 to 7, sometimes at 5 in the morning. So Bhumika started a running career in 2009 with just running 4 kilometers because her husband works with Wipro, sort of goaded her into run that because she just lost a father. So he said, you had to do something positive now. So that gave her the impetus because she came first in that race. So standing on the podium for the first run, she decided to pursue her second career in running. After winning many national and international medals and awards in running, with her progress, she dreamed of a vision of not only representing her country and winning medals, but also in imparting trainings to hundreds of women, and especially able across in India. And of course, for us also, the Cancer Survivor Group, she's been with us, coordinating with different oncology hospitals at Bangalore. And we've been really very, very thankful to her for supporting not only us, the winners, but also the caretakers, who are also very important. And she is founder of Guide Runners in India, and her team has achieved several Indian records with visually impaired and guide runners. I was with her. We ran with 6 visually impaired children with guide runners from Mysore to Bangalore. That was the first record that she set in India, with 6 visually impaired children being trained by her. And she was also recently awarded by Governor of Maharashtra for outstanding contribution to national building by promoting national fitness. I can't now. Somebody on the call, sorry. So these are various achievements. And now to top it all, she's been awarded an honorary doctorate also from the World University of Records, because she held this for visually impaired training, and the amount of work that she's doing with all of us is, something I'm very proud of. So Bhumika, over to you, Bhumika. Thank you all. Enjoy.
Thank you, Uma, for the introduction, lovely introduction. Thank you for having me for the session here. I'm really passionate about this topic. And I did some additional learnings about contact tracing and COVID-related tools to be used. And here I am giving the session today. And today's session, we are targeting citizen volunteers and people from the residential communities and others who are actively working on the COVID-19 pandemic. And my screen is stuck.
No, but we can see you.
We can see you. Yeah.
Yeah, our screens are not stuck.
Oh, you can see us? Okay.
Yeah, now we can see
You can see me.
all
Okay.
in one.
Okay, so just before I move on to the presentation show, I will just talk. So the session will cover definitions, and it will cover a contact tracing template, how you can use it, and how to make contact tracing more manageable in the community spread scenario. And I'll be sharing a few templates which you can utilize. So to the contact tracers, I want to tell you about, this is a telecalling. It's not something that we will be going door to door and doing right now. This is a training for telecallers. So,
Sorry, can I just stop you and say we can't see this shared screen. We can only see your video. So
yeah,
your
I'm going to
presentation
share.
we can't see.
I'm going to share the screen now.
Okay, okay. Sorry, okay.
Yeah, it's good. Now we can see.
Yeah. Yeah, so like I said, the agenda for today, the session aims to cover people who are actively working in the communities to address the COVID-19 pandemic. And they are mainly what we call the citizen volunteers who are working closely with the government, community health care workers and doctors. And they go by many other names, and there are people from the residential societies also who are working, they formed residential teams to work on the pandemic the COVID cases in their societies. So the whatever I'm telling you now today with the templates would apply to them. And so we would cover some of the basic definitions. There will be discussion on the parts of the contact tracing interview. There will be a contact tracing template which will be shared, and also what are the communication techniques that we can use for a successful interview. So these are some of the definitions. A contact tracer, like if many people have confusion about what is a contact tracer, contact tracer is somebody who would mitigate the help mitigate the transmission in the community. They will identify high risk contacts and elderly, immunocompromised people. And contact tracing team would have a contact tracing supervisor, like a team of 10 to 20 people would be having a supervisor who will help in organizing the data to identify trends in transmission in the community, resolve any conflicting data, and help with the escalations. So a contact, who is a contact? These are the standard definitions. We are going to take 2 days before the onset of 2 days prior to the symptoms. And anybody, yeah.
I'm sorry. I just want. I'm sorry to interrupt. My name is Rahul. I'm from Koramangala.
Yeah.
I just want to know now. Now, when we talk about contact tracing, now we too are volunteers. Now there is even a contact. I mean, ASHA workers team, and there's a contact tracing team of the BBMP also who do it on the
Yeah.
from the BLO level. So, is this an initiative along with that, or this is a parallel initiative?
So what happened is that the term that BBMP, the government people, healthcare workers, they are called ASHA workers, who are working in both urban and rural setup for collecting data door to door, identifying contacts, and they have an app which they have to report, and it's part of their job. And they do the data filling into the app, and we do not have any access as people from volunteers from the residential communities and others. We do not have access to that kind of data. We do not have live data with us, and we are the volunteers who are working for these government teams. We do get they do get data, but it may not be live data. It may be after certain point. So we can talk actually to the existing people, the quarantine volunteers, and check what is the data that they get, that how live is it, and at what point we are getting. But it is so the reason why we want to do community the contact tracing right now as residential communities and citizen volunteers by ourselves is to handle the data. We know that in our society we have these 10 positive cases. This is not BBMP giving us the data. This is the as a society we know these are the positive cases. So we set up a contact tracing team for ourselves, and then we go about handling that information. This is not anything coming from the BBMP side right now. So we're taking a very simple scenario.
Okay.
Bhumika and Rahul, this is Ashish here.
Yeah.
If I may just, if I may add, so I mean, Rahul, since Bhumika has been doing these trainings, and you know, some of us are involved with the BBMP, you know, as BBMP volunteers, and there are other
Right.
people who are living in apartments or who are in RWs, etc., who in any case do their own contact tracing. So, for example, you know, in an apartment, when someone is tested positive, even without BBMP, there are people actually doing contact tracing. And since there's a lack of, I mean, it always helps to have clarity on, you know, what are contacts, how do you trace them, how can you do it better.
Absolutely.
So that is the context in which Dr. Radha organized this. So,
Right.
so it will help us also who are working with BBMP to the extent we can influence the process, and it will help
Okay.
in the RWAs and apartments, etc. Also, people who are here to do it in a better manner. So that's the context. And Bhumika, could you mute everyone?
Yeah, can we take questions and clear doubts once the presentation is over, so that the flow is.
Sorry, I muted somebody. Yeah, can I go ahead?
Yeah, Bhumika, please go ahead.
Yeah, so we will come to the questions, and there is definitely overlap in the current. There are a lot of people saying that we are volunteers for this already, then why are you doing it? And there will be some duplication that people will think there is, but we are trying to just simplify the whole thing. And so just in very simple terms, what these are the some of these very basic definitions that we should be knowing as a contact tracer. We are going to say as a contact tracer, my duty is to identify high risk close contacts. I will identify elderly and immunocompromised. So they can be, you can widen the scope much more than this, but right now we want to identify the high risk, the elderly, immunocompromised, and our goal, as corona warriors, we are going to mitigate the transmission. We want to break the chain of transmission, and whatever data we have right now, we're going to organize it well. And so that's why we need contact tracing supervisors. So that's the definition there. And then who is a contact? So there will be people with these criteria, the direct physical contact to a COVID-19 positive case. So that is the definition. And somebody who is a healthcare worker who direct care of patients without using proper PPE equipment, those kind of contacts, we are going to identify the high risk ones. And of course, there will be low risk also, so we'll mark them as low risk. I will show you the template later. So what is a confirmed case? You receive the testing and the test has come positive. That is a confirmed case. That is a simple definition there. And there is a pre-symptomatic period, which means that the symptoms have not yet developed. And asymptomatic is some symptoms never develop. Although your test result has come positive, but your symptom has never developed. So these are some of the terms that a contact tracer should know. Then there is screen moving is not happening.
Hey, Bhumika, can you just stay on the screen for a minute? Like, can we just read this?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I think you can move on.
Ashish, I'm taking the photographs with my other handset, all these templates. But she will put it up anyway again.
Yeah, so this is the symptomatic period, mostly after 5 days of contact from COVID-19 person. Infection period is when when we do the COVID test, RT-PCR test is positive, the infection period, that's the infection period. Then you have the quarantine. Quarantine is different from isolation. You can read the definition here. You have, so for a contact tracer, what is important terminology is person under investigation. So this is a person who has symptoms and is COVID-19 positive. Right now, this is the definition we are using. You can also say that, should I investigate asymptomatic people, pre-symptomatic, what should I do? But right now we are just saying that the COVID-19 positive confirmed cases that we have in hand, and they have symptoms, we are going to investigate them, and whose past exposure to the virus is being investigated. So that is known as the index case. And a contact is anyone who came in close contact with the person under investigation. So we are going to do the list of contacts. We're going to list them down, the names, their numbers, and then a few other data. What is their relationship to the person under investigation, their risk level, those things will be captured. So there is a PY and there is a contact. So these are two different things here. Now we're looking at a community transmission kind of scenario in our society. So the scope can be very, very huge. So we've just, in order to make it manageable, we are saying which contacts should we trace only for confirmed current COVID positive. And this is very simple for us because as a residential society or community, we know that in our community, these are the positive cases because they reside with us. And so they as a part of our association committees, it is required for them to inform us. So that's why that's a simple case where we have the positive cases in our hand. And then contacts, which contacts to trace, the ones which are high risk or with high prolonged contact with someone who was COVID positive, nursing home or hospital visit, household work contacts, and then there are healthcare workers, vulnerable contacts like the elderly. So we are saying right now public places, retail stores and all, we need not capture too much information about that in the current scenario of community transmission. But if there's an event which is known event, where you know that there's you went to an event where the guest list is available, then that guest list will be something that we should track. So this is a simple template that we have. Now a contact tracer would use on the call. I hope you can see the sheet that I'm sharing.
Yes, we can, Bhumika, go ahead.
So there is a very this is a template that we can modify based on the society that the community that we are doing the contact tracing for. But so there can be a master template, and out of which we can select that. Right now, because our contact tracers are these many. I have the count of contact tracers is this much. This is the amount of data we can handle. So the basic minimum data has been put down here. We are saying that the person under investigation, what is the name of the person, and if there is a contact tracer, so the volunteer name who is doing the contact tracing. You have the case ID which BBMP has given you, track that. And for that person, then you're coming to the column H, the column G and H, and you start off with the listing down of the, there was a maid in the house who stays full time, so that person's name is written here. And because it's a full time maid and in good contact with the person under investigation, the risk is high. So there's very high and low risk can be, we can have many different definitions of this, but right now the simple definition is high someone who is within the household. Meeting has limited minutes, unlimited minutes. Okay. So we are saying high is someone who is within the household and low is someone who is outside the household. So someone can ask that why are we capturing the high and low risk data right now? What are we going to do? So then again, the answer would be that you would, depending on the resources that you have, how many contact tracers and how many supervisors, how many leads have you put in place, you can take the next level. This information can be taken to the handed over to the second set of contact tracing team, which will then say that these high risk, we will do the follow up because we want to do additional things for elderly, high risk people, or that kind of high risk vulnerable category. I want a separate set of contact tracers who will go extra and do the extra things. But right now we are just capturing the entire list here. And yeah, this is how it is. And you're going to, you're going to determine the date and the time the person under investigation first had COVID-19 related symptoms. For example, a cough or a fever. So you're going to, from this date, you go back 2 days. And 2 days is what we are saying that we can manage right now. We can also go 5 days, we can go 10 days before and start adding all the contacts. But what it will be very, very unmanageable in the current scenario. So we are starting with 2 days. So you can also adjust it based on your requirement. The date can be set. So now there are 4 parts to a contact tracing interview. First is the introduction, second is information gathering and listening, and then we have advice and instructions, and then the conclusion. I'll just let you look through the introduction. So this is what, when interviewing, these are the things that will be there, part of the instruction, part of the introduction for the PUI, and then the contacts also. So to the aspiring contact tracers, I wanted to tell you that how important it is to have a successful phone interview. So one of the first steps to make sure you have a successful phone interview is to have all the relevant documents in front of you. And you're going to enter into a conversation with somebody that contains, the conversation contains news that they may or may not be ready to hear. So it might arise some concerns and questions for them. So listen to their tone, listen to their questions and answers, and give answers to any of the questions that they are trying to ask based on the approved advice. So there is going to be an approved list, and only the approved list should be used for giving advice, and not any jargons, medical jargons should be avoided. Um, and then if you don't know the answers, it's fine. There are a lot of questions on COVID-19, and we don't know many of the answers, and so it's okay. So how important is listening here, and listening to the tone? It is important because we are not going to be physically going and meeting them. So it's very important that we understand the tone of the voice. Is the person getting scared, uncomfortable? They are very close to the they are not open to having a conversation. You need to understand that, and then how do you make sure that you are getting your message across? So you need to also check whether they are understanding the language that you're speaking, and the information that you shared, are they understanding it? So like I said, to avoid using any jargon, any medical information that can get tricky, that can get very tricky for people. We should avoid those. So also when closing out, make sure that you leave the contact with information that they can, giving them your contact number and say that they can call you back if they have any questions, or if they need more information as the investigation moves forward. So those are some of the things that will help make a successful interview. So now there is an interview script which is available in the reference material. I have attached it. This interview script can be utilized for introduction. How do you introduce yourself? There is a sample script. Just fill in your name here. And we need to reiterate that the information that is being collected will be kept confidential. Build a trust, and then do the introductions, and then start doing the information gathering based on the template that I shared in the previous slide. This is the script. So this material should be there in front of you when you make the call, and we can modify it based on
slow
type
on the
of teams that.
templates, please. Can we go a little slow on the templates?
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
So the part 2 information gathering is covered in the template, the Excel template that we, so this is just a summary of when we tell them that I'm going to start collecting this information, and then you start filling it into your sheet. So there are questions here to assist in recalling who the contacts are. So try to gather all this information in the same call as far as possible. And any other information they don't recall or remember, they can text you or message you later, but try to get everything together. So this part on advice and instructions, you're going to just leave them with an advice on the current scenario where we are saying take 2 days before the onset of symptoms, and um, note down all the contacts. And as a contact tracer, your job finishes by just advising them and forwarding them to information where they can, the links, the approved information you are forwarding to them, giving them, and leaving them with your contact number. But then there will be a second set of contact tracers who will take over from your information that you have collected, from the first team of contact tracers, and then the quarantine follow up as they do the quarantine for 14 days. What symptoms they are facing, whether the contact has become now a case, contact converted into a case. Those things will be followed up by a second set of contact tracers. So the resourcing part would be critical here, that now I'm not going to call up that person every day right now. The first team is not going to call up every day to check whether how are you doing and all. Their job just finishes by concluding by all the contacts that this person under investigation remembers. You note that down and then hand over that information to the second set of contact tracers, who will be the quarantine volunteers, quarantine contact tracers, who will do the follow-ups on the symptoms. And then if there is a contact who converted into a case, so then the first team takes over that person as a case, a contact tracing case.
Bhumika, could you move to part 2, which is the key part of this, where we ask about the contacts? Yeah, this. Okay, thank you.
So it is advised by the CDC and the WHO that when you are investigating and you find the contacts, and so the next you are going to be talking to the so you're going to notify the contacts of their exposure. At that point, the advice is that not to reveal the identity of the person under investigation. So that can be something you will have to handle. Many times you may have to just, I don't know, I think the identity may get revealed, but try not to reveal the identity of the person is the advice here. Okay, so here when we are saying, when we are giving advice, we are saying that these are the approved set of links. It can be a website, it can be helpline numbers, and avoid all the jargons that you can, medical terminologies. And we have to understand, like I said earlier also, that they may be facing some complicated situations. So be aware about that. And there may be some harsh reactions coming. So there will be multiple scenarios in which you can handle, like Dr. Adha Krishnan was suggesting that the elderly volunteers can take over some of the cases from the volunteers in case they find some that any kind of hostility may exist. So try to pick volunteers from the same community. Be sensitive about the language that they use. So it works better if these kind of things are taken care of. Then the contact interview, you can advise them that when there are red flags, so we are right now not doing anything like checking every day, what was your symptom, is everything fine. We are not going to uh, we may not have the bandwidth with our contact tracers to check every day about the symptoms, but we advise them that if in case you develop symptoms, we're telling the contacts that in case there are red flags and symptoms, these are the hospitals and local authorities, you can inform them. So they can also inform the contact tracer, but the contact tracer would not be, it will be out of scope for him right now. And the supervisor will also not be given the responsibility of doing anything on their side. So it's best that they give them, there are local authorities who will take care. So you inform them that any symptoms, just directly contact these authorities. Yeah, so that is a conclusion. Then there is trouble, anybody having trouble hearing, people with disabilities, we again need to be a little, it is all scenario based. Like I can give you a situation where a person who is blind and he has parents who are sighted, and the person is trying to help the parents reach a hospital, and the ambulance is refusing, and all kinds of scenarios can happen. So you may have to take the help of the local disaster management teams, and it could be yeah. So you may have to go out of your way to help those people, and then there will be people who will not be able to hear properly, hearing impaired people. So make sure that they understand by reiterating what you said on the phone, by writing as a text message, so that they have, and then they confirm that they have understood. So these are some of the things. You can read through some of the items that are written here to avoid any misunderstanding. If you wear a mask and talk onto the phone, the voice will be muffled, so people will have difficulty understanding. So it's very important to be clear and in a quiet place when you're talking. So these are some of the communication techniques. Be confident. You have all the information with you when you're talking, and build the trust. Be non-judgmental. Be open for them to ask you questions. Listen more. Maintaining professional boundaries with the interview respondent is very important. Sticking to facts is important here. Provide clear information and correct information, to avoid any misconceptions. Encouraging positive behavior, that's important. Show that you're grateful for the information. that they have provided. So communicating in a way that the respondent understands, so that there again, yeah, if somebody is Hindi speaking, Hindi contact tracer would do better. So the team structure here, you will recruit people from your own communities, the same communities, and then having regular trainings for contact tracing teams, because you will keep adding on to teams onto the team with different set of tasks assigned to each one, because the data, as the data is growing, you will then need people to manage the data, to do the reporting part, and how did we stop the transmission. Those kind of analysis will be something that will be good to do. So trainings, ongoing trainings are important. So supervisor's role is very important here, because they will help with the technical and problem solving and quality monitoring of the team which is in place. These are some of the reference materials that are available. There's a tool called Go Data, which is recommended by World Health Organization, and they say that for any kind of epidemics, this tool will help you to visualize the chain of transmission. It will help you to easily convert contacts into cases, and how do you identify which cluster to focus on, and those kind of things. So these are some of the roles that are built into the tool which WHO has recommended. I just put some few screenshots so you get an idea, because right now we are all working in Excel sheets, and there may be government apps which are currently available, but we may not have access to that data. My presentation is hung. I'm just going to share. So there is the tool has this facility of assigning icons to different professions. Like if it's a healthcare worker, there's an icon assigned to it, and it helps in identifying which contacts are healthcare workers, who are religious leaders and things like that, and do the visualizations. There's also the team assignment screen available there, where in one team, how many members can you add, and what are the locations of the team members, and things like that. So as you list down in your data file that this is the list of contacts, the contact will develop symptoms from those list of 20 contacts that you identified. One of them may develop symptoms, and then that contact becomes a case, And so how do you convert a case into contact is easily doable in these kind of tools. So as the data becomes huge and unmanageable, there will be some app and tool requirement outside of your Excel sheets. So that brings us to the end of the presentation. I'm going to show you one last this is what has been infographically presented by the CDC, simple depiction of what contact tracer is doing. So a public health worker will call you is what is mentioned here. We are citizen volunteers here doing from the contact tracing team, and we are going to contact. So there may be duplicate calls that will go. So that is something we need to be again sensitive about. That I already got a call from a government official, and now there is another contact tracer who has called me. So this part you will have to handle it. That somebody getting multiple calls, and so the contact tracer makes a call, and the person will have to answer the call to provide all the information, and you whatever steps I mentioned about the how to go about doing the interview, you will do that, and then you will finish it by offering your assistance. So that's as simple as that. And if you do it with templates and with the proper communication technique, you will have the data, right data in place, and then you can do the analysis. So my last advice to contact tracers would be that we have to remember that we are an integral part of for stopping the spread of COVID-19 in our communities, and we all really appreciate the efforts which the contact tracers they are putting together already, and they will be doing more and more now, and definitely contact tracers have a very important role in stopping the spread of COVID-19. That's why this kind of a team putting together this kind of a team will be a crucial element for all of us. So thank you all. Any questions? I can take them now. So I have Dr. Ishwar also on the call, and he has been working with my team. He's from USA, San Diego, and he's a specialist in this field, so he's also there to answer the questions.
Sports medicine, no? Sports medicine, Dr. Ishwar.
Sports medicine, he's in sports medicine.
Yeah, sports, medicine,
Yeah, sports medicine and also family and community medicine. I have dual board certification.
Dr. Ishwar, how are you?
Bhumika.
Very good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good, thanks.
Yeah. Bhumika or Ranjit or Radha, does someone want to facilitate the questions? Like I have raised hand to ask.
Yeah, so Bhumika, I think since you are the host, you will be able to see people's hands raised. So if you wish, you can call them one by one. Ashish has just raised his hand, so maybe he can go first.
Yeah, Ashish, go ahead.
Okay. Thanks for doing this, Bhumika. Are you doing? I had a couple of questions.
Yeah.
So first one is that you mentioned 48 hours. So initially when you were saying it, I thought 48 hours from the symptoms is the beginning, and then from that you have to go back 14 days. But it seemed to me later on that you're basically saying, let's say if there is a person who's tested positive and we call that person, then we have to ask him or her saying, who did you meet 48 hours before you got the symptoms? So primary contacts are only those. I mean, you're saying I did realize that you said
so
48
which contacts?
hours could change.
So like we said, which contacts to trace? We mentioned that only the confirmed COVID positive cases is what is the starting point right now for us. And so from,
True, true.
yeah,
Got
so
it.
whatever the symptoms, whenever you develop symptoms, 2 days before that.
That's all. But currently, BBMP is looking for people 14 days. I mean, asking people saying, "Can you tell me who you met 14 days before the thing?" So you are saying 48 hours, but it could be basically anything between 48 hours and 14 days, right? Depending on what is the decision as to how
Yeah.
many days you
What
want to
is
go
the
back.
decision that how many days do you think is manageable for your team? What will you do with the data after that? Those
Okay,
critical
fine.
decisions need to be taken, that you can take 2 days, you can take 5 days before, you can take 10 days before. And but in the current scenario where every day we will have so many scores of cases coming, will our team be able to manage that? What will we do with that data? We have to take those decisions and modify our template. So this is the
Okay,
recommended
fine. But
WHO and CDC.
okay, fine. So what is the WHO and CDC? It's 48 hours, is it?
Yeah, it's 48. Yeah.
Okay. But suppose we are doing it within our apartments or communities and people are cooperative and are willing to do more. What is the ideal, maybe Dr. Ishwar can say, like what should be the ideal that one could go if people are cooperative and it's possible?
Yeah,
Is
doctor,
it
can you take that?
7 days, 14 days?
Yeah, I think since the incubation period is somewhere between 2 and 14 days, 14 days would be reasonable. It's just that now at this point we have such widespread infection. So, and also you're going to be limited to your close contact. So whatever you determine, so it's what we're using is pretty arbitrary. So yeah, 14 days would be ideal. Again, if it's within the capability of the volunteers who are calling, it may amass a big list though for that 14 days, and it actually is time. It's cumbersome, you know, to ask for every single day to trace to have somebody trace from memory. But if it's possible and you can do it, then of course you can go back that far. There may be individual cases per call where you feel like you have to go back that far. So you can use your judgment, and you can determine by your community or ward or wherever you're in charge or supervising to determine that time period, as long as you're relatively consistent.
Okay, got it. The other question I had was that once you have identified, I mean, and then definition of primary contact I saw in the slide, which I think bears calling out, is say, you know, there were a couple of points which said that the person should have met the other person for 15 minutes in close contact. So, you know, I think that is important to call out, because sometimes what could happen is people have just met, you know, they could have met outside, or they might have opened the door and talked to someone. So then there are doubts whether what defines a primary contact, saying just meeting. So I think that guideline which was there on your slide and which I've seen in other, you know, ICMR docs also. So I'm calling it out for people on the call that 15-minute interaction indoors and in close contact is an important point. The follow-up question I had was that once you have identified the primary contact, there's also a concept of secondary contact. So can you explain a bit about secondary contact and what is the use for that? Is that for, as you said later towards the end, that in case the primary contact becomes positive, then the secondary contact is the primary contact of the, you know, the person who has become positive. So you will already have that data. Or, you know, what is the purpose of, what is the secondary contact and what is the purpose of identifying secondary contacts? Can you explain that?
Bhumika, do you want me to answer that question?
Yes,
okay.
You can take it, doctor.
So the secondary contacts, then you're talking about, so if you call a contact to the primary contact and you ask them about their contacts, that's a lot. And so then you end up getting, it gets to be very cumbersome. So I think because again, there's widespread infection, you know, we're not in a containment situation where we have to clamp down and get every single person, you know, because now at this point, the coronavirus is everywhere. So just to make sure that with the large volume of people involved in the tracing, I think it's most reasonable for the volunteers not to get overwhelmed, to just contact the primary contacts. And once they get symptoms, because it's otherwise, if you're, the question then is how much are you going to isolate everybody and what instructions are you going to give to the secondary or even tertiary contacts? So it can generate an unnecessary amount of isolation and also can generate panic in the community, and things can get out of control. So I think the most reasonable and the most feasible way to do it is just limit to the primary contacts and just let them know that, and take it as it comes. So if they do develop symptoms, then you take it from there. Or I'm sorry, if the primary contact becomes a PUI, then you have to go back and they'll enter the system. So the way Bhumika set up is that those primary contacts, once they're alerted, then they know that they have to contact their medical provider or go to the hospital. And then once they become positive or become a PUI, then they re-enter the system as a COVID positive, and then you're looking for the contacts.
Got it.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. The context, especially for close communities, was that, for example, if there's a house help working in a COVID positive person's household, and she also works in 3 other apartments in that same community.
Yeah.
What we have been doing is, what we have been doing is, sorry.
They all become contained, and you should not allow the maid to work. That's what they have been following, at least in my apartment. We don't allow the maid.
I know
to
that.
work.
Yeah. Uma, let me complete.
Yeah.
So what I was just trying to explain that actually what we have been doing is that we've been containing the secondary contacts also in this manner through the contacts of the house help or the contacts of the. So it's a good to know that we've been being more conservative. But I mean, I get it, that's finally subjective. But just for your information, in apartments, that is what has been being followed. So secondary contacts, or for example, if the house helps relatives, I mean, close relatives are working in other houses, and these situations arise quite often.
Yeah. So what you're saying about the now, if we in the data that we captured about high risk is we can have a second set of team. If you say that high risk, the maid which was working, and those set of people can be taken over by a second set, but the first contact tracers, the job is done and they finish it. And we get the more the number of resources, we form a second team to take on all the high cases. So that's where get covered right now.
So it's definitely an excellent point that you're making. And this would have been, and it definitely would have been indicated back in January, February, when the coronavirus was just entering India in certain spots. And it was, it was just maybe regional or even case by case. And at this point, if you have, again, the bandwidth, the resources, and people want to inform, it's always better to be cautious. It's just that it might not be practical, because once you get to the secondary context, let's say you get to let's say there's a maid or house help that helps other houses, then you have to gather the information about where those people are and then contact those people. That can become extremely cumbersome and time consuming. And then you don't get to the core primary contacts because you get stuck on secondary contacts. So to get through that list of COVID positive primary contacts, I think would be the highest priority. And then if you have time, you can go back to secondary contacts.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sure, you're welcome.
Yeah, I'm done for the moment. Thanks.
Thanks.
Yeah, Uma, your next question.
I was just wondering, you talked about the supervisors. So what are the prerequisites of a supervisor? Is there anything laid down that you should be a health worker or just a volunteer? How does it work? It's very important, the supervisor role. So who becomes a supervisor?
So supervisors will be people from the same community again.
Okay.
And they can be from the NGOs. They can be student volunteers, community volunteers who have worked, who have some skills to put a team together and manage a team. So there will be trainings that will be done to become a supervisor. So this is the first training that is done right now. And depending on how we put the team together, we should then have the next training for supervisors, next training for quarantine was contact tracers, like that. So this is just the initial training, and they will have to be trained, and it will be a template. So it's not a big task. Supervisor will, the only complication there for supervisors would be handling escalations. They should be able to handle the any scenarios where the contact is not answering properly, they are refusing to give data, they are absconding, and those scenarios supervisor should be handling it.
So Uma, that's a great question also. And what Bhumika will be doing moving forward is she will set up the criteria for what a supervisor will need to do, like a checklist and requirements for what a supervisor will be able to do. And then people who are interested would step forward. So I think that it'll probably be self-selecting on this part of a supervisor who sees the requirements, responsibilities, and says, yes, I can do this. I can give because it'll also, Bhumika will probably estimate a time requirement. So some people will just say, I can only be a volunteer. And then some people say, you know what, I have enough time and I have the bandwidth that I can be a supervisor. And then Bhumika will train accordingly.
Okay, thank you, doctor.
Yeah, sure.
And the next thing was that, sometimes the primary contacts, I also come in touch with them. They don't pick up your call next time because they know your telephone number and they're either feeling shy or don't want to, they're not wanting to talk to you again. I mean, what do we do? The second call, if you fail, when you know that they are in the high risk, especially seniors, elders, they feel shy, they don't want to talk. Maybe it's a stigma of the society. I don't know what it is.
There is a lot of stigma, so that's why some use somebody senior to talk to a senior person, elderly person, and in their own language, try to get them to be comfortable. Somebody known, this is a residential society, somebody known to them would be a good person to be in touch.
So the president and secretary of the RWAs or the Apartment Association, they have to take an important role, right? They should come forward to lead the team.
Yeah, the management team has to be fully supportive there, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
One thing also is that if you're able to leave a voicemail, I think Bhumika had mentioned this in her discussion, that you want to, it's essential and very important for the volunteer to emphasize that it's non-judgmental, only for helping the community. You want to make sure that they understand that there's no punishment involved. It's just really for the benefit of the community, and you're calling it in great beneficence. And so that would be something to emphasize in any kind of voicemail, or if they decide to write a letter or get somebody else involved, that you want to try to break down that barrier that the person has, whether they're shy or uncomfortable, or whether they fear retribution or punishment. And also what Bhumika had mentioned about trying to keep the COVID positive identity anonymous. Some people don't want to be identified in the community as being COVID positive, because then they're going to get, they get judged in their community. So I think to try to emphasize that we're doing everything we can to help them remain anonymous would be another thing to leave on a message, another point to leave on a message, or any kind of initial communication if somebody says, no, I don't want to do it. So the reassurance is key.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, doctor. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, Krish. You raised your hand.
Yeah, so question for Bhumika. This contact tracing, the way you've described it with the supervisor and teams and things, is that actually happening anywhere in Bangalore now?
When I spoke to the teams that were currently saying that we are already doing quarantine contact tracing, they were actually doing only the quarantine data, that people who have gone into 14 days of 14 days of quarantine, and somebody is calling them daily to check what is the status of their health. So it was done in bits and pieces like that. It is not the way being done the way it is. So they are saying contact trace. So somebody has called and then the data is collected, but I have no access to the data. Somebody from the COVID team, supervisor. So they are not, the documentation of the data is not there. Some things like yeah, that information is not captured to the extent that we can do some analysis. That those are missing pieces. They're doing in bits and pieces.
Okay, that's
Most
quite
people are doing the second
worrying.
part. Yeah, most people are doing the second part where the quarantine is there 14 days every day, daily check. Do you have symptoms? Do you not have symptoms? Yes, no, and things like that. Where are you? What's your location? So that is the second part, small part.
Okay.
Yeah, it's happening in Bomanhalli zone for sure. I know that. Exactly this.
In this manner?
Yeah, in this manner. In fact, there are some IBM people, I think, involved there.
Is it?
Maybe that.
So why are we not doing it in Koromangala, Ashish? You, Rahul, and Nidhi and others. We should start doing it here.
No, we are, as I mentioned earlier, apartments are doing this.
No, not as an apartment, as an entire ward. I mean, only then it will make sense.
No. I know. But as regards the BBMP efforts, we are doing whatever the BBMP guides us and trying to also influence what they are doing. But it gets decided at the zone level. Anyway, we can take that offline.
Ashish, sorry to interrupt you. Bhumika, can you please mute Jaya because there is some disturbance? Thanks.
Yeah. If anyone doesn't have a question, I have one more question. Is anyone else raise the hand?
No, go ahead, Ashish.
Yeah. Okay. One common thing that comes up is that, let's say, we identify a primary contact and then we tell the primary contact that you should remain in home quarantine for 14 days. In many cases, what happens is the family, if someone is tested positive, the entire family gets a test done. And then what we are told, or what the logic of the general people around is saying, hey, the person is positive, he or she is in hospital, or he or she is self-isolated in a room on a different floor, and all the others have tested negative. So then do those people who have tested negative, are they free not to maintain home quarantine? Now the response that we have been giving is that there are many false negatives. The timing of the test also is important. And therefore, if you're a primary contact, whether you're tested positive or negative, please stay home quarantine. So I just wanted your comments on that.
No, that's absolutely right what you're saying. A negative test does not mean that you're negatives. The test is done to detect the positives.
So depending on the type of test, that is absolutely correct. So the safest methodology then would be to be consistent and then just make sure that all the closest contacts are quarantined, and then you're watching very closely for symptoms.
Right. So yeah, in some cases, in many cases they do, people who are well off and can afford it,
Right.
do the RT-PCR test. But even that could have false negatives, and the timing also is important. So we do try to encourage them to, home quarantine for 17. In India, it's currently 17 days from the date of symptom is what the home isolation is. I mean, in Bangalore, I don't know about India, but in Bangalore.
So also about Bomanhalli, I was in touch with the Vinita, who is the citizen volunteer lead, I guess. She has told that there are teachers who are doing contact tracing in Bomanhalli. They are physically going to homes and checking. And yeah, so there are Anganwadi workers which work.
Yeah, no, Bhumika, there are also citizen volunteers helping. I know a team of, my own.
Are they physically going there?
No.
Or
We are
is
doing
it on the phone?
We are doing it on the phone with exactly similar kind of spreadsheets and similar kind of scripts.
Okay, and the live data, the
we
data is
can
coming
connect
from
offline.
BBMP, or is it from the residential houses?
No, it's through the BBMP control.
So that is the part, right? When it comes from BBMP, it is after so many days, isn't it? It's not like
it's reasonably. Yeah. It's not a community-based thing. It's a centralized.
It's not a live. So that is important, that the data is live. That is the most critical part. So you can do all kinds of things with some data which comes to you, but that data is 10 days old. Then it is not going to help you.
Yeah. No, in this case, at least the specific case that I'm talking about, and these are about 100 calls.
Yeah, but
happening daily.
is BBMP giving them live
Yeah, yeah.
data?
No, it's BBMP who is sort of spearheading this, and it is live data. It is
Oh,
the
then
day
it's very
before.
good. Then I spoke to some of the
it's
wards
very
that
good.
they do not have a live data.
Yeah. No, they have reasonably well organized because
Very
the
nice.
IS officer in charge is Captain
So if
Manivannan
it's
has
happening,
been.
it should be replicated.
Yeah, it should.
And she was going to join here today. I'm not sure if she's joined, Vinita.
Who? Vinita. I
Yeah,
don't see her.
Vinita from Bomanhalli.
I have one question to the doctor. Hello.
Yeah, hi,
Yeah.
hello.
Go ahead.
Yeah, hi. I have one question. So, if you have a family, say of 5 living in an apartment, and all 5 are positive, does each person have to quarantine separately in a room, or they can just mingle with each other in the flat now that they're all positive? Because BBMP has been giving contradictory advice to people.
Yeah, there's some people are thinking that the viral load can transmit from person to person. I don't think that's the case. And so there hasn't really been a recommendation to further isolate. It's not even feasible really to further isolate when you have a whole family that's positive. So
Right.
I think in those cases that, it's not going to be practical anyway, but, I think keeping the family together in that case is going to be just fine.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sure.
I just want to know one thing. I mean, there are like non-IT techies, like for example, myself. I won't know so many of those things to use the spreadsheet or your. So what do we do? A lot of templates which you showed. So all of us should have somebody who is willing to do that for us, right? There should be somebody who's capable of following all this on the Excel sheet and like a guide, because a lot of ladies, even in my age, seniors, we want to be a volunteer. But how do we go about it? Do we call upon all the youngsters to support us?
So you can have a piece of paper with you. You can have a tablet or a computer, anything. So you can just note down and then have somebody input that information.
The other thing, Bhumika, is that for people who may be less tech savvy but still want to volunteer, that second layer where people are calling the contacts, there's less data to collect. And so it may be that they're placed in that category. I don't know what you think about that, Bhumika, but that would be another option.
Okay.
So calling the contacts themselves rather than calling the PUI where there's going to be a lot of information to collect. If you call the contacts, the list of contacts is much easier.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Thanks. Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Payal, go ahead. You have a question?
Yeah, I do have a question, doctor. Now, see, when they're home quarantined, so have they to open the window because they do require a ventilation, right? So is it okay with them if they keep the window open, or should they be into the 4 walls being closed across?
Okay, so this is a little controversial, and it's a great question. So, in terms of, are you asking for about a PUI, or are you asking about a contact?
No, this is about a positive who's been tested positive and they've been home quarantined.
Yeah,
So, the neighbor buildings, the buildings are quite close by to each other.
Right.
So to require the fresh air, should they open up the window, or if they have to be quarantined into the 4 walls without the air, the fresh air, I mean to say?
So once you get air currents, then you can transmit virus. And so in close quarters, like apartment buildings or houses that are abutting each other, where you have a coronavirus person in the household, you probably don't want to generate any air currents that would spread into a common area or to neighbors. So, you don't want to be stifling, but at the same time, that's one way, because right? Because we're having difficulty fully determining how the virus is spread. And so it can definitely spread through air currents that are generated by wind draft. And so if you have too much of a draft from a coronavirus positive person, then it certainly can get into the neighboring environment, especially when people are in close quarters.
Yeah,
The
that's
same
true.
question
That is
I
what
have
I wanted
asked
to know.
now. Yeah, because
Is
in
it?
my daughter's apartment, the neighbors had right next door apartment, there are boys, 3 boys.
Yeah.
They all have tested positive, but I believe they keep the doors open. Most of the time the doors are open, so she's not able to even get outside at all. So that's, I don't know how BBMP has not come there. Once they tested positive and they put the notice and went away, that's about almost 10, 12 days ago. After that, there is no sign of BBMP guys at
Mm-hmm.
all. So she's just,
Yeah.
stuck at home.
Yeah, the
For
doors
that,
can
she's
be closed.
supposed
I
to
was
be
just
stuck.
talking about the windows, because even that's too scary if they keep the windows open. That could easily spread across through air, I guess.
Yes, Payal, that is the problem. When in an apartment, it's a common
Mm-hmm.
wall, right? Mostly. So then
Yeah.
what do? You do keep the windows open, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you don't
Just
have
Okay.
AC.
No,
well,
or a certain amount of time because they too require a fresh air to breathe, right?
I think that restriction time is more commendable than just keeping them open the whole evening till the night. You know how the children are.
Oh.
So that is a point for concern for the immediate
Mm-hmm.
next door apartments. Okay, corridor
Mm-hmm.
is blocked, lift is blocked, security
Mm-hmm.
doesn't come up, but she needs to step out to get her groceries, her food supplies, or the water,
Mm-hmm.
whatever. Then how does she manage?
so
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so people will get oxygen in their units, windows open or closed. It's just that when you have the windows open, you're going to be generating directional wind flow. And so
Yes.
that's when it becomes the riskiest, actually, because it actually forces air through the building. And so it's
Mm-hmm.
probably a better idea to either, you keep curtains up or
Mm-hmm.
you keep the windows probably closed. I mean, right now you're in a colder season, so it's not as critical to have
Yes.
cool air coming through. So it makes it easier. But
Mm-hmm.
wind drafts are definitely a concern, especially, in these high-rise apartments or close quarters, for sure.
So it has been now successfully proved, doctor, that the air also can, there was a lot of this thing attached to that, right? A lot of discussion going on whether it's airborne or not.
Well, I mean, through the respiratory droplets for sure, but how far the droplet transmits, how much viral load is in the droplets, all of that is sort of undetermined. So we have to use our common sense in these scenarios. And so, so the best we can do is make some guidelines and just, try to get people to use their common sense as much as possible, and then just keep your fingers crossed the rest of the way.
If they have common sense.
Thank you so much, doctor.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hey,
But
I
then
had
at the same point, how do they throw the garbage outside? Like they quarantine, they're not supposed to open the door to come out. How about the neighbors also being quarantined? So how does the garbage people enter into it? Because the entire street is being seized out.
Hello, can I answer that?
Yeah, please do, sir.
Yeah, this is Ashish. Bhumika, you can correct me. So, currently, as per the current containment rules, the entire street is not supposed to be contained. It's only the house in question that is to be contained. And in an apartment block, it's only the same floor that has to be contained. That is the latest guideline. So, first of all, the entire street does not need to be contained.
No,
Second, as
actually,
regards
I'm sorry to interrupt, but then the neighbor street of ours is entirely quarantined because one apartment is completely being quarantined because there are 15 people who's been tested positive there. So they've seized the entire street. So wouldn't that be affecting the neighbors to throw the garbage outside and the BBMP to collect it across?
Definitely.
okay.
The BBMP
Yeah. So
collects the
I'll respond to the waste part. The way it's supposed to be done and the way BBMP is doing it is that whoever is positive is supposed to put the waste. They are taking it as mixed waste. Is supposed to put it in a bag and tie it up. And at least in Kormangla, it is being collected on Wednesday and Saturday. It's, I mean, when I say all this, you have to keep in mind that it's the regular, I mean, the systems are not miraculously changed. So when I say Wednesday and Saturday, it may mean that you have to chase for that, but they're doing it twice a week. and they are supposed to come spray it with sanitizer and then pick it up, and it goes to the landfill as mixed waste. So that's the
Okay.
process that's supposed to be followed. Now, as to your question about if an entire street or a set of flats, whole area has been quarantined, then does the same apply for all the waste in that area? Now, at least here, what had happened was that while the entire street was contained, for the for other than the house which is positive, for the others, the BBMP person would go in and pick up the waste as normal. It's just that his van wouldn't go in, but he is supposed to walk in and pick up the waste. People are supposed to leave it out, and so that's the following. You can separately get in touch offline if you need any help with waste management in Koramangala.
Sure. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
But it's always Ashish, you and me know following any of these guys is like wishes for horses.
Yeah, but it works.
Okay, Ashish,
finally it works.
sorry to interrupt, but can we limit it to the questions, please? And those who already have raised their hands, if there are no questions, can I request you to lower the hands? Otherwise, Bhumika will get confused. Payal, do you still have a question? Your hand is still up.
No. I don't have. Sorry. I'll put down
that's
my
fine.
thing.
Okay, Uma, do you have a question? Your hand is also up.
No, I thought if the session is getting over, I'll thank her. That's all. Nothing. Thanks.
Okay. Radha, do you have a question? Okay. Is there anybody else with any questions for Bhumika or for Doctor? Okay. So Radha, I would like to invite you if you would like to do closing of the session.
Yeah, thanks. So firstly, to thank Bhumika and Doctor for taking the time out to come and tell us about this and then educate us. And I don't think we can sort of emphasize the importance of good contact tracing and isolating these primary contacts, because truly it's been proven that that's the one thing that can stop this or decrease the spread of the coronavirus. And that's something that at least Bangalore wide we're not doing well at all. So that's definitely something that we need to start doing, and we need to do it community wise. So to start off, maybe in Koramangala, I'd request Ashish and the group that has experience in doing it in apartments to form larger groups so that we can all contribute towards doing it in the entire ward, and maybe use this ward as a pilot to extend this sort of activity to other wards, and then ask Bhumika to sort of keep an eye on us and then ensure that we're doing it properly.
Bhumika, a challenge for you thrown again. Anyway, you meet all the challenges, so this should be Doctor. Of course, Doctor is
sure.
time.
No.
Definitely, I am ready to support anytime. You just let me know.
Lovely. Bless you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Doctor. We're missing you here, Doctor.
Yeah, I wish I could come back. It's very difficult now. Who knows when?
Yeah, I know. How are your parents doing? Okay?
You're good. Thank you. Yes.
Okay, good. Good show.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you again.
Thank you a lot. Thanks a lot.
I know it was a short notice for you.
So
but,
the request
you
is
made
let's not just forget about what we've heard today. Let's start doing this ASAP so that we can get a process in place in our ward at least. Yeah.
Yes. We have to lead, right? As usual, Koramangala has to lead. Then for others
let's
to follow.
start doing that. Yeah.
Rahul,
Rahul,
I'm sure Bhumika is
you're the
doing it
boss.
already in HSR and in their apartment.
Yes, sir.
So
Yeah. Thanks, Rahul.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for coming. Yeah.
Bye.
Thanks.
thanks, Bhumika. Stay blessed. Thank you.